Well, hello and welcome to week 4. We are halfway through this course, so congratulations on doing such a great job up to this point. I know we had a few hiccups with the discussion board, but glad we were able to get that set up and get everybody back on track. Most of you appear to be up to date. A few of you are still working on getting your proposal completed. So make sure that you get that in. This is a good time to really think through what you are planning to write about and outline what areas you're planning to cover, so then we can work together to make sure that you are on track and that you don't get too far in the process before it's too late and you have to detour and go back to the beginning. So want you to be the best all the way through and not having to be redirected. So make sure that you get those in as soon as possible. As we move into week 4, as usual, you will have your normal PowerPoint that will cover your chapter reading, and this week it will be chapter 5. So make sure that you're reviewing chapter 5 prior to taking quiz number 2. You do have quiz number 2 this week. You all did really, really well on quiz number 1, so I expect the same for quiz number 2. And make sure you allow time this week for those discussions to look back over and or complete your proposal to make sure you're on track, because that week 5, 6, 7, and 8 are going to come really quick before you know it, and there's a lot of work that's building up to that point right now. So please, please, please make sure that you're setting time aside appropriately. In regards to the chapter reading, it's based on chapter 5, basic skills for direct practice. Remember, this isn't a class that we're really teaching social work and human services. It's more about refreshing and then beginning to kind of put into perspective what that would look for us working in the field. A few of you are already working in the field, and so really thinking how what you have learned from the textbook and theory perspective, how that applies to the practical world of real life. And so in chapter number 5, in chapter 5, you're really looking and revisiting relations to that social work and actual direct practice with your clients or customers. So when you talk about behaviors and things that you do or pay attention to, how your responses are they closed-ended? Are they open-ended? Are you leading into those responses and gathering more information? Are you reading in between the lines? Are you using the right words and making sure that everything you're doing, from your visual to your physical to your expressions to your words, how are those being used? Paraphrasing the information that is being shared with you to work towards building the trust and helping them to want to continue to talk and give more information for you guys to work together towards a shared solution and meeting those goals. A lot of information, as I said, in relation to that, the skills for direct practice, but for open-ended questions. So on page 93, it talks a little bit about it, and then I love how it goes into examples. So I refer you to page 94, 95, and really getting an example of the close-ended perspective, what you want to stay away from on page 96. So a lot of focus on 93, 94, 95, because those are real examples of how that could work for you in the field. Some of them may be not good to you. So really looking at what is shared here in this study and the responses that you're given and how you feel comfortable in responding to those, and just kind of talking through or working with another peer and kind of role playing to see what that would look like to better get comfortable with being able to further assess or follow up on responses that are being given to you, and then just asking for that clarification and really making sure that what is being either shared, asked, questioned is truly understood. So we are making sure that those correct responses are being given in a manner of trying to help the client or customer towards a shared solution and towards their goals, as I said before. So just really quick before I go to the discussions, I'm going to touch on this week's PowerPoint slightly. I'm not going to go page for page. I want you to take the time to do that on your own, but I do want to touch on a few slides that I thought had really good information. And so it really talks about that perspective of what is social work, and working in the field. What does that look like when you are practicing social work as a social work practitioner, and looking at the multi levels of intervention? And so it's not just based on necessarily an individual. That individual impacts a family, which impacts groups, which impacts organizations, communities. And so it goes from that micro level of all the way down to that one individual, but how that one individual, or from the macro level, the highest level, how communities and organizations are working and collaborating and coming together and providing resources to meet those needs, all the way to that level of micro, which is all the way to the individual and their family. So I think that was just a good way to kind of show how the different systems interact and build upon each other. Another area, and it shows here, and it's really good when you talk about problem solving, and these are really good terms and points of reference when you talk about working through. And each organization, when we talk about social work from a adult and aging perspective, or from a children and families perspective, there's decision making processes. And so you'll see like flow charts, you'll see risk of high risk, low risk, and this is a really good way of assessing. So engagement, assessment, planning, implementation, evaluation, termination, and follow up. Those are really good ways to follow a model to make sure that you're looking and thinking through all of those aspects and dimensions in relation to making the most appropriate decision um, in someone's life, really, and problem solving what is needed. So just carrying on, really only wanting to touch on some of those um, really hit home pieces of the PowerPoint, but all aspects of this PowerPoint is important, and I encourage you to give it your attention in relation to reading the chapter prior to taking the quiz. So on this slide, it speaks of the 5 agreed upon dimensions, and so it's speaking of the 5th dimension, but I think it's important here to really look at the knowledge base chosen from a range of theories, because as you start writing your capstone project, you're really going to want to base it off of a theory. So what is the core of where this all came from, and why we should be practicing this way, why we should be following these type of examples, or proven evidence of what works in problem solving and decision making with working with clients and trying to move them into more positive outcomes. And so I think this is a really good quick reference of those theories that I encourage you to give your time and attention. Continues on. This is just an example of talking through an organizational structure. So really quick visual of how that works. And so talks about it from the organizational structure, the cultural competency to make sure you have the knowledge, the values, and the skills that are needed, because from that goes into the practical aspect, the application of those true processes, and how are you applying those principles and values based on a wide range of roles, critical thinking, and following a plan change process. And it goes back to working through and emphasizing client empowerment, human diversity, advocacy for economic justice, but recognizing what that targeted system is. It starts at that largest macro system level, working all the way down to the most smallest micro, which could be all the way down to that one individual. As I spoke of before, this is a good point of reference. It kind of breaks down each of those components: engagement, assessment, intervention, evaluation, termination, and follow-up. So really good point of reference prior to taking your quiz. And then this the last few slides of this PowerPoint breaks down more in the theory based, so systems theory, ecological theory, and just really working through different examples and how that works within a system. So a lot of good information. I refer you to that, and giving your time and attention, as well as listening to this lecture and talking through what is needed for you for the next week to make sure that you have all the information as you go into week 4. I was holding off because I wanted to be able to provide more feedback in relation to your proposal outlines, but I only received one proposal up to this point, so I don't want to wait too much longer to get your lecture to you. I know many of you like to get ahead and get your work done early in the week, so I wanted you to have this information. So I was trying to balance out the time between allowing you to submit the work, but also not waiting too long to make sure that I'm giving that information to those that need it. So what I have seen thus far with the proposal, great job, on the right track. I know the individual works in the field, so very excited to see the information that you will bring forward in relation to homelessness and making sure that you're meeting the needs of those within our community. So I'm very excited to see more information. For those of you that have not turned in your proposal, as I said before, please reach out to me if you need to do a Zoom meeting for us to talk it through, bounce ideas off. But this is a starting point. So I need you to get that to me to make sure that you're on track, that you don't get too far ahead. With that, we'll jump into the discussion for week 4. So discussion board number 1 is to identify and describe 3 nonverbal behaviors that can effectively derail an interview if used incorrectly. So do you see how all this is coming together? Just really starting to think about working in that field and how you are going to take the information that you've learned from the theory base and how that will work in the real life, and kind of talk that through. And then hearing from your peers, as I said and continue to say, gaining good insight from those already working in the field and being able to share more specifics into what that looks like real world. For discussion board number 2, it's asking, of the interviewing skills presented in this chapter, which is chapter 5, which 2 do you think are the most effective in assisting a client to open up and share personal information? As I talked through before in chapter 5, there's a lot of sections that talk about behaviors, positioning, the way the touch, tone of voice, silence, furthering responses. So really refer to that chapter and find where you think it's the most effective in assisting them to build trust and open up and share more, to get the information that's needed to make the appropriate assessment. And then last but not least, as I said, your quiz. Just like quiz number 1, multiple choice, make sure you're trying to do it. Make sure you set time aside to do it in one sitting. You don't want to go in and out of it. It's for chapters 3 through 5. If you haven't read those chapters, make sure you catch up and do that prior to taking the quiz. You all did really well last time, so looking forward to the same thing happening again this week. As always, if you're not sure about something, if you have questions, if you want to talk through your proposal and your capstone project, please reach out to me. Contact me via email. I will get back to you as soon as possible, and we can set some time aside. I do not have a problem with setting up Zoom meetings with you if needed, and allowing us to connect in a way that's most beneficial to you. So wish you all the best for week 4. Hope you have a wonderful week. I know a lot is still happening and taking place with the COVID-19, and I hope you all are taking care of yourself, remaining healthy and staying safe, and keeping in mind that there's still a lot of work ahead in relation to finding a vaccine for COVID-19. And so just asking that you stay home as much as possible, wear your mask when you have to go out, interact with people out in the open and not in close quarters. You have to go to work. Make sure you're taking the appropriate safety cautions to remain safe. And we continue to pray for not only your safety, but the safety of our friends, family, other peers, those in our community, and that we will work through this together and get to a better place. And so I wish you the best this week. Take care, and until next week, goodbye.